Welcome to our Living with Vision Loss Low Vision Workshop. Thank you for being here. I'm Danielle Miller. I'm the director here at the Talking Book and Braille Library, and we'll have our panel here do introductions, and then I'll go over a few things with you. So I'll go to my left with Keiko.
Okay, can you hear me? All right. My name is Keiko Namakata, and I'm a volunteer here at the library. We do a couple of these type of workshops. Another one that I do is Introduction to Braille. So if you're interested, I'll put in my plug right now. Anyway, we're having one in March 25th. I think. Anyway, but as you might already know, I'm blind, and I have vision issues since I was little. And I guess I was a low vision person back then, and gradually lost vision as I got older. Um, and at present, I have no vision. And just to give you a little background, I worked in the field of blindness, particularly in vocational rehabilitation, and for what? About 40 years in a variety of capacities. And I retired in 2014. It so happened that our first grandson was born in 2014. So, well, I transitioned from work to working grandma. So anyway, I have three grandchildren now, and they keep us busy and helps me to stay in fit so that we could chase after them. But anyway, I guess that's it, and I'm going to switch over to Julie.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Oh, I really am. I like to eat the microphone. My name is Julie Brannon, and I'm also retired like Keiko. I retired in 2019, and my career for 30 years, 17 full-time, the rest part-time, I was a social worker for Child Protective Services. I got my degree, my master's degree in social work. But then where Keiko was managing the orientation and training center, and they called and said, "Hey, we need a Braille teacher." Oh, that made me happy. She and others gave me the chance to have a career in my favorite field, which is teaching. So I ended up teaching there and at the Lighthouse for the Blind, teaching career and career development and Braille. And then Keiko retired, and I took over her management job of the Orientation and Training Center. And like I said, retired in 2019. I am married. I was a late marriage person, got married in my very early 50s, but I made sure I married a man younger than me. So I robbed the cradle, and my husband's 10 years younger. When we married, he was visually impaired, and during our marriage, he went totally blind. He and I both, and I'll tell you my story in just a moment, went totally blind overnight. So we both have that in common, which is very interesting. We moved from Seattle to Puyallup, Pierce County. I don't know if any of you were from that direction. Love it there. Retirement has been, when I moved, COVID hit, and retirement, all three at once. And I wasn't sure which was making life strange. All three of those were quite life changes, but I've been very busy. I've been very active in a consumer organization that I'll tell you a little bit more about, Washington Council of the Blind. And I'm very active in my church. I teach Bible studies, etc. So anyway, life is busy, and you'll hear more later. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm Jane Elliott. I am a former teacher of people who are losing their vision late in life. That was what I did. I'm a one-eyed person myself from birth. I've never had vision in my right eye, but it hasn't been an issue for me. It did, however, make me very sensitive to the issues people face who are losing vision. I worked for a long time at Sight Connection, which is a Seattle nonprofit helping people with vision impairment. Unfortunately, we went bankrupt in 2019. And since then, services to people who are losing vision later in life have really declined. And for that, really that reason, after I retired, I spoke to this wonderful team of people here, and we decided to offer these workshops because people weren't getting a timely service out in the field. So what we're doing today is very, very basic. I realize there are people who are congenitally visually impaired or blind, particularly on Zoom. And I hope this will be interesting for those folks because it really is targeted to people who are new to vision impairment. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. So a few things about the workshop today, kind of some housekeeping first. And I do want to say hello to everyone on Zoom joining us. So glad to have you here also. We will be recording today's session, but if anybody talks about anything personal about their own vision condition or anything that seems personal in nature, we will edit that out of the recording. So we won't put any of your personal information on the recording of this session. I want you to know that. If you are concerned at all, don't say anything too personal and talk to us after. So hopefully that's okay. And the restrooms are located just outside to the left of the conference room. We will have 2 short breaks during the session, so you'll have that time as well. We will have someone who has a microphone for the people in the audience. So if you have a question or comment during this session, please raise your hand and wonderful David will bring you a microphone, and that will help to make sure that the people on Zoom can hear you. We want to make sure everyone is able to hear and participate. Please make sure your phones are turned off and keep talking to a minimum so everyone can hear and be engaged in the workshop. And I think that is most of the rules, but I know we can all just make everyone have a welcoming, comfortable space. And then I wanted to tell you what is in the packet that you have. You have a packet of handouts that has a couple resource pages. There's a page that has services listed, a page with online support information, a page with support groups and advocacy organizations, a page with some recreation links, and a page about transportation. All of this information is on our website in a link that is being shared in the chat for the Zoom participants. So Zoom participants, you're getting a link to exactly the same information. And on that link, there's also a link to a document that Julie will be talking about in her session that is called Emotional Adjustment to Declining Vision. And that is also in your packet. So that is also being shared in the chat on the link that Riley is sharing. So thanks to Riley for doing that. There's also a feedback survey that we'd love your feedback at the end. And a link to a survey for the Zoom people will be shared at the end of the workshop as well. There's also an application for Talking Book and Braille Library Service. If you're not a library patron and you're eligible for service, we'd love to have you. That application is available on our website, and we'll make sure our website link is in the Zoom chat as well. So you can sign up for library service, which I'll talk a little bit about as we move along in the workshop. So that's a little bit to get us going. Are there any logistical questions or comments before we launch in? Yes, let me have David bring you the microphone.
Just had a question since I know you, Julie, I think your name's Julie. I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. You live down in Puyallup as well. Her and I are down from south, but I don't see anything in the handouts that you guys offer anything for South Pierce County or in Pierce County as far as like transportation or other
So
things.
that'll be covered when we go over these sections. Most of these resources specifically mentioned are for this area because that's how this workshop started out. But they all are relevant statewide because you'll be able to contact the transit in your local area. For example, there's a different paratransit for each county. So there is one in your county. Or when we mention the Department of Services for the Blind, they have support throughout the state, while their main office here might be in Seattle. So these services do branch out over the state. Or we mentioned one support group that's a local Seattle area support group, but there are resources to help you find low vision support groups in your area. So it's just too much to list all of them on these handouts, but it does transfer to other areas in the state. That's a great question. So we are mindful that we're a statewide service at the library, and we want to make sure that you have that statewide support. You can also contact the library, and the librarians here on staff can help you connect with those services. Okay, so that was a great question. And we are going to kick it off with Keiko next.
So well, I'm going to start with thanking all of you for coming and attending the workshop to hear what we have to say. As Jane mentioned, that this workshop is, we designed it intending to reach out to those people who are newly blind and experiencing, difficulty in working with conducting daily lives with newly diagnosed vision loss. So the workshop content is maybe very basic, but hopefully those of you who have had experience with vision loss for a while, you'll take something with you. Okay, so just to give you a brief outline what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to start with Jane talking about various eye conditions that leads to vision loss and its impact on your residual vision, meaning your vision that you have remaining. And then Julie's going to help us walk through some of the emotional aspect of vision loss and what are the steps that you might go through, maybe address some of your concerns and maybe fears as well. And then Jane's going to take us back and do the really nitty-gritty stuff. So learning about basic tips and strategies and some common tools that might help you to be more independent and continue to do the stuff that you have done as a sighted person. And finally, we're going to talk about resources that's available to you. And we'll try to cover things that is relevant to people who are living wherever they are. And at the end, we're going to do a little discussion on technology, mainly iPhone and how we might use it. And Jane and Julie and I will be participating in that discussion. So, okay, so I'm gonna turn the mic over to Jane to talk about the eye diseases.
So by talking about the eye. And again, this is very, oh, I feel I'm all echoey. Okay. This information is very, very basic. And I'm not medically trained. So our interest is in what the eye is, what the conditions are, and how they affect your life. That's what we're looking at. So let's start out. What I'm doing now is I'm showing a drawing, a diagram of the side view of the human eye. Okay? It is not beautiful. I didn't do it. My husband did it. But it gives you a general idea of how the eye looks, starting with the outside of the eye. And I should also say that eye conditions, macular degeneration, glaucoma, in the industrialized world, in Europe, in North America, in Asia, most eye impairments, vision impairments, come later in life. A huge percentage, something like 80 or 90%, happen to human beings later in life, the kind of things that some of you are experiencing. So things happen to the eye as it ages. We're going to cover that, but let's start with just the basic anatomy of the eye. On the outside of the eye, the outermost layer is the cornea. Maybe you've heard of this. The cornea is sometimes called the window of the eye. The cornea has two main functions. One function is kind of like a window. It keeps stuff from getting into your eye, right? Something comes flying at you, the cornea protects your eye. The other and more important thing that it does, the cornea is curved, and when light hits the eye, the cornea focuses about 65 or 70% of the light that comes into the eye. So it's focusing light as it enters the eye. Behind the cornea is the colored part of our eye and the hole in the middle. The colored part, the iris, the most beautiful part of our eyes. And then in the middle, this hole. What the iris does, besides looking beautiful, is to control the size of that hole of the pupil. So it makes it bigger to let more light in, help you see better, and then it contracts and gets smaller to let less light in when you don't need it, when it's really bright out, right? So your pupil gets really small when it's bright and it gets bigger when it's dark to let in more light. And that's the iris controlling the size of the pupil. Behind the pupil then, really important, this is the natural lens that is in our eye. We're all born with it, and when we're born, we have a really beautiful clear lens that's very pliable. It gets thicker and thinner. The lens is responsible for focusing the rest of the light that comes into the eye. So 65, 70% gets focused by the cornea. The rest gets focused by the lens. The other thing that the lens does is it gets thicker and thinner. When I'm looking way at the back of the room, I'm looking at something far away, my lens is thin. And then as I bring it up and look at something close, my lens is getting thicker, thinner and thicker. And then behind the lens, we have all this fluid. It's called vitreous humor. It's thicker than water, but it's thinner than jello. It's something kind of in between. And the purpose of this vitreous humor is to help the eye keep its round shape and also to nourish the eye. It nourishes the back of the eye, the vitreous humor itself. This liquid flows and circulates throughout the eye, keeping it healthy. So far, so good? And then at the very back of the eye, we have this layer of tissues, which are very sensitive. They have all these photoreceptors in them. Light is passing through the cornea, through the pupil, through the lens, through all the vitreous humor, and it hits the back of the eye on the retina, on this extremely sensitive layer of photoreceptors. When light hits it, the retina changes that light into electronic impulses. Sounds fancy. Takes these electronic impulses up to the brain, and then the brain says, you're looking at a chair. My eyes don't tell me that, my brain does. So light coming through the eye, back of the eye, changing into these electronic impulses sent up to the brain, and it's translated, kind of like a photo developing laboratory, if you remember those. And then in the retina, right in the middle, we have an area called the macula, or the fovea. Does anybody know what the macula does? Looking for a little group participation here. Anybody? Huh? Sort of, yeah, that's pretty good. So I said that the retina is responsible for receiving the light and sending it up to the brain, right? In the middle of the retina, the macula is really packed with some super sensitive light receptors. They're called cones, and these translate into very fine detail everything that we're looking at. So the macula is responsible for our detailed vision. Everything that I see in detail, I'm seeing with my macula. It doesn't really matter how it works, but it matters that that's what it does. And we're going to talk more about it. But again, we need a fully functioning retina in order to see, and the macula is responsible for what we see in detail. Okay, so that's the basic functioning of an eye. As we get older, things change to our human bodies. And likewise, our eyes change as we get older. And everybody, pretty much 100% of human beings, start to experience some difficulties with vision as they get older. Can anybody tell me what happens typically in middle age to the eye? Come on, I know you know. Okay, so what's your name, ma'am? Anne. So Anne is saying it's harder to see at distances and also up close. Okay, thank you, Anne. Anything else? What happens in middle age to our eyes? Did anybody need glasses for the first time in middle age in this room? People are nodding. Yes, so you guys are very shy. This happens to everybody, almost everybody, except for a couple of men who won't admit it. But mainly, this is a human thing. In middle age, around the time of 40, our eyes start to do different things. And one of them is presbyopia. Anybody heard of that word? This is the medical term for when that lens, the lens behind the iris, behind the pupil. I said that when we're born, it's pliable, it's clear, it helps us, it adjusts, it gets thicker and thinner, right? When I'm looking at the back of the room versus when I'm looking at something close. In middle age, that pliable nature of the lens in our eye, guess what? Becomes less pliable, like a lot of other things in our body, right? That happens to pretty much everybody. And then what do we do when that happens? What do? You get glasses. Yeah, you get reading glasses. So that is part of being a mammal, a human being. It happens. The lens stops being flexible. What else happens to the lens? Anybody here have a cataract? Okay, a couple of hands gone up. Again, this is a normal part of being a mammal, a human, a mammal. It happens to dogs and cats too, doesn't it? They're mammals. So what is a cataract? Again, we're talking about that lens. Let me flip back to it. I know you guys remember. But this lens at birth, it's clear, it's pliable. And in right around the time of 40, the age of 40, 45, not only does it become less pliable and it stops being able to adjust to near in particular, near distance, not so much, Anne, but more near. It won't adjust to near vision. That's why people need reading glasses. The other thing that happens to the lens is it gets cloudy and yellow with age. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so when your lens gets cloudy or yellow with age, what happens? What do? Anybody? Okay, the lady said drops. This is a cataract. So when you have a cataract, you have it removed, right? So I shouldn't have flipped the chart, but that lens behind, all they do is they whip it out and they replace it with a clear plastic lens. And that's a cataract operation. So again, this happens to pretty much everybody. I said with presbyopia, it starts at 40. It kind of gets worse and worse and worse until about the age of 65. And then it stops, and then you get other problems. And you forget about the problem with your presbyopia. Cataracts tend to happen after 60. Again, they happen to pretty much everybody, and it's a normal thing that can be cured. Dry eyes. Anybody deal with dry eyes in this room? Ever? Again, hands up. This is a very common problem in middle age to later. Basically, it's just tear production. Tear production stops being as good as it was. Very frustrating getting older as a human being, isn't it? All this stuff happens. But again, dry eyes. How can you deal with dry eyes? Anybody? Drops, yeah, artificial tears. And that usually does it. If it doesn't do it, the other thing that happens with dry eyes that's so frustrating, they get so uncomfortable and even sometimes painful that your eyes start to water. You get the opposite condition. So now you're crying all the time, but you're crying because you have dry eyes. Artificial tears are the answer. If they're not the answer, you need to go to your eye doctor, and that's for sure. Okay, so presbyopia, cataract, dry eyes. The last thing, floaters. Has anyone experienced floaters? Okay, again, so normal and so annoying, don't you think? I mean, I'm a one-eyed person, so I think I might feel it worse than you guys that have two eyes. But floaters, what are they? That vitreous fluid that I said, it's thicker than water, but thinner than a jelly. So that fluid, again, in middle age, it starts kind of clumping together. It shrinks and it clumps together. And then when you're looking through that with your vision, it looks like string or cobwebs, right? Does this sound familiar? And as you move your eyes, the cobwebs should move with you. If you have cobwebs or clouds or something in your field of vision and they don't move as you move your eyes, call your eye doctor. The other thing, if you have spots in your vision and they're accompanied by flashing lights, definitely call your eye doctor. But otherwise, floaters are an annoying, normal part of being a middle-aged person, and I still get them, and I'm not middle-aged anymore. So there's something you just have to deal with. Nothing you can do about it, typically. Okay, so these are all normal. This is what happens to normal human beings, but there are a lot of conditions that are normal they're very common in many people in this room and on the Zoom right now. So these are what I call conditions of low vision. Or can you guess for me? Could you say that a bit louder? Vision less than normal. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Come on, you guys. What's a guess? Decrease in what you normally saw. Thank you. Okay. So it's important to tell this to you because you're going to hear this term all the time. If you're dealing with macular degeneration or glaucoma, you have a condition of low vision. What it means in the medical community is two things. Well, basically one thing. Your eye condition cannot be improved with glasses. Glasses are not going to help very much. And initially they will help a bit, but long-term glasses can't fix it. Medicine can't fix it. Surgery can't fix it. Nothing can fix it. There's no cure. This is a condition of low vision. Boy, that sounds really depressing, doesn't it? I'm sorry, but we're here because we can deal with it in other ways. What I'm saying to you is these are conditions that cannot be fixed medically. That's a condition of low vision. We talked about cataracts, right? Cataracts are not a condition of low vision because guess what? They're fixable. You have cataract surgery and you're going to feel like you've never seen so well in your life, unless you also have macular degeneration. That's a whole other thing. So low vision, this is a condition that cannot be cured, basically. You might be told you're legally blind. Can anybody define that for me? I'm making you guys work. I'm trying to make you work. Can anybody define legal blindness for me? Can't see well enough to navigate. Thank you, Anne. Sir Joseph?
Vision under 20/100.
Whoa, the medical definition. You know, this is the fourth time we've done this group, and Joseph, you're the first person who said that. That's absolutely correct. So, yeah, I'm just going to repeat it. So what Joseph said, legal blindness is defined in two ways. Joseph has just defined the main way, which is vision, which is measured at 2200 or less. What does that mean? I really like talking about this because people misuse the term legal blindness. What it means is when you go to the eye doctor and you look at the chart, you know, with the letters on it, with your glasses on, with your best eye, your best vision with the best lighting, sitting in that chair in that well-lit office, all you can see is the big E or less with your better eye. That is the main definition of legal blindness. Okay? No. Thank you, Anna. I was just going to go there. Thank you for bringing that up. So what Anna is saying, can you be legally blind in one eye? No, you cannot. So again, I am a person with one eye, as I told you. My right eye doesn't work. My left eye works pretty darn well. I am not legally blind. I can see pretty well out of one eye. So if anyone says they're legally blind in one eye, it's not accurate. So the way that the medical community looks at this, they look at you holistically. What are you able to see with your eyes, whichever ones work? Legal blindness. There's one more definition of legal blindness, and that is for people who have something called tunnel vision. It might be caused by glaucoma, it might be something else. But if you picture looking through a tunnel, you have no peripheral vision, nothing around, but just in the middle, and you've only got a tiny little area in the middle of your vision, you might be able to read a sign a mile away if you can find the sign. So your field of vision is so small, that is another definition of legal blindness. Okay, she has a question. Yeah.
Tunnel vision, that also equate to macular degeneration as far as the definition for legal blindness.
I don't think that mic's on, is it? It's okay. Well, go.
The tunnel vision and the legal blindness definition for other things, not medically wise, but does macular degeneration also qualify for the tunnel vision and the legal blindness?
So if I'm understanding you right, does macular degeneration, does it qualify as legal blindness? Yes, it does. You know, it depends. Macular degeneration is a big spectrum. Some people can still read and function very, very well visually. Others on the other end can't at all. So it's down to the measurement, clinical measurement of your vision. I'm going to talk about these eye conditions more specifically. So hopefully by the time we're finished, we'll be able to answer your question. Can I ask what your name is? Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so we understand, hopefully, low vision. This is a condition that cannot be improved with glasses, with medicine, whatever, surgery. And then legal blindness has a definite definition, which is clinically measurable. And that's important to doctors. They want to be able to clinically measure your vision. Now, one thing I want to say to you guys, I spent my career teaching people who were losing vision later in life, teaching people how to get through the day. How do you still cook? How do you still clean? How do you read? How do you communicate with people? How do you walk safely outside? So clinical measurement of vision had little meaning to me. I would meet somebody with 2200, Joseph, as you said, somebody who was legally blind, and they functioned so well because of the person they were, because they were trying really hard. They were finding ways to cope. Equally, I might meet someone with the exact same clinical measurement who didn't function well at all. So we are amazing creatures, human beings. We are not just a pair of eyes. And there's much you can do even with very failed vision. That is my mission in life. That's what we're here to tell you today. So although we talk about legal blindness and low vision, and they're not fun, and it's terrible to have that definition put on you, it does not say anything about how well you can function. So there are some people in this room with macular degeneration. I know that because they told me earlier. And let's talk about macular degeneration a little bit. Macular degeneration is by far the leading cause of vision impairment in the industrialized world. Lots of reasons for that. But again, we live very long. We live poor lifestyles, particularly in the United States. You know, we eat the wrong things, we smoke, we do things that make it all worse. But nonetheless, it is very, very prevalent throughout the industrialized world. Age-related macular degeneration, ARMD. This is its own category. The vast majority of people who are living with macular degeneration have age-related. They're getting it later in life. But I want you guys to know that there's a younger version of it too. It is very rare, but it does exist. And that's why we refer to the type that you have as age-related. There's a younger version called Stargardt's. Okay, can I just ask in the room, can people raise their hand if you don't mind, if you're living with macular degeneration? Oh, okay, several of you. Okay, have any of you had any treatments for your macular degeneration? Treatments, any kind of, and what have you had? Do you know what the treatment is? Okay. Into the eye. Yeah, thank you, Anne. Okay, all right. Anybody else? Any treatments? Shot the injections. Eylea, thank you. Yes. Laser surgery, that's interesting. Okay. Yes.
What's the difference between I just
Got it.
what's the difference between Eylea and Avastin?
Oh my goodness.
I just recently changed.
Okay. So hold that for a second. Okay. So treatments for macular, I'm going to come back to that. Treatments for macular degeneration. When I started doing this job in 1993, a long time ago, really, and I was starting in England. I'm married to an English guy. So, oh my God, the ophthalmologists in England were so patronizing. And the people would come home and they'd say, oh my God, the doctor patted me on my back and said, go home, dear, and live with it. There's nothing we can do. That kind of treatment. There wasn't anything they could do in 1993. But through the years since, there are dietary supplements. None of you mentioned that, but there are dietary, and somebody's nodding now. So there's supplements you can take which can be beneficial to the eye. When I started, a few years later, they were doing laser surgery. also on macular degeneration. They don't do that as much now. And then in the early 2000s, they came up with a drug that had been used for cancer. Before I talk about this, I realize I'm just talking a bit out of order here. There's two types of macular degeneration, dry and wet. Have you guys heard of that? Some nodding going on. Dry macular degeneration makes up the vast majority of people living with macular degeneration. It is just the eye, the retina getting older, thinning out. These drusen, these little clumps start forming, and they gradually damage the macula. Dry macular degeneration is less chronic because it takes a long time. I've known people that were living with it for years and still managing to read, still managing. It can be very slow. Wet macular degeneration, on the other hand, the retina is nourished by blood vessels. And what happens with wet macular degeneration is, I call them rogue blood vessels. Their inferior blood vessels start to grow in the macula, and they're inferior in as much as their walls are weak. The walls burst, and then there's leaking of blood or fluid into the macula area. When something leaks into the macula, it causes scarring. When you have scarring, you can't see. It becomes an area of non-vision, okay? So wet macular degeneration represents only like 10% of all cases, but they are far more serious. And for wet macular degeneration, there is now this treatment of the injections, which some of you have mentioned. What do the injections do? Whether it's Eylea or Avastin, they are designed to inhibit the growth of these rogue blood vessels. That is their main function. Okay? If the blood vessels don't grow, you don't have a problem. If they grow, you have a problem. They burst, they leak, they scar the retina. So, Anne, your concern about the benefits, I'm not a doctor and I cannot speak to that. I certainly can speak to your
Early on. Aren't we just enjoying doing this on Zoom? Okay. All right. Whoa. I feel like I should break into song or something. I left my heart. Okay. So, Anne, I can't address your concerns, but I really think you should talk to your doctor about it. Okay. Good deal. I certainly have heard wonderful positive stories about the injections and their impact on wet macular degeneration. But it's a very personal choice, and having something injected into your eye doesn't sound fun. I know. I will say that you do not regain vision that you've lost. That's for sure. It's not going to come back, but slowing down the very potentially rapid advance of wet macular degeneration is something, as a one-eyed person, I'd certainly consider it. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or anything you want to say about macular degeneration? This was very, very brief and quick. Yes.
I had, excuse me, I had the laser surgery, but it was because one of my lenses had clouded. There was a film over it. So they did that to remove the film.
Secondary.
So, right.
Yes. Okay. All right. So macular degeneration, not fun, takes away your ability to see in detail. Doesn't happen all at once usually. Again, there can be unique situations, but in general, this is something that happens over time. And can I just say it's very devastating. For those of you who are living with it, I get it. It's not fun. So macular degeneration, our what version? This could be contrasted with glaucoma. Let's talk. Does anybody here have glaucoma? Oh gosh, almost more people with glaucoma. You got both macular degeneration and glaucoma. Lucky you. Woo. She's got all the luck. Okay. Glaucoma is even possibly more complicated than macular degeneration in that it has a lot of different permutations. So again, I'm going to speak in really broad stroke terms, okay? So I said macular degeneration impacts your what version? Glaucoma in broad terms affects your where vision. What am I talking about? I always give this example. When I'm walking down the street with my one good eye, I don't walk down the street looking down. You probably don't either, right? We don't walk like that. We walk looking forward. I want to see what's in front of me. I want to see if there's anything that, anybody I know I can say hi to. I don't look down. And yet, when I'm walking down the street, I will see something out of the corner of my eye. That's our expression in English, yeah? I'm using my peripheral vision. Out of the corner of my eye, I see something on the ground. That's my where vision. My peripheral vision. It tells me that there's something on the ground. I can see there's something there, even though I'm not looking at it. I'm looking up here. But if I want to know what it is, I have to turn my gaze and look at it with my macula. Okay? So basically the way our eyes work, we've got our where vision, which is keeping us oriented. Generally, I can see that I'm in this room, but I'm basically looking at Melissa, even though I've got all this stuff around. So glaucoma, what it does, back to the diagram. All this fluid in the eye, its job is to nourish. Its job is to keep the eye round. It circulates throughout the eye. And in glaucoma, there is a stoppage. Pressure builds up because the fluid isn't circulating. It's building up kind of like too much air in a balloon. And it ends up damaging the optic nerve. When the optic nerve is damaged in that way, it affects our peripheral part of the retina, generally speaking, with glaucoma. So this is our where vision. I'm going to use a more high-tech version next time. We call glaucoma the silent stealer of vision because you're not aware of it. Now with macular degeneration, suddenly you have trouble reading, right? Some things are cloudy or fuzzy. You run to your doctor thinking, I need stronger glasses. And you get the bad news. It's not glasses you need, you have macular degeneration. With glaucoma, people don't realize it. Humans don't realize it. I wouldn't realize it. Peripheral vision, it's just telling us that there's something there. We're not really using it to see in detail. So people typically don't even know that they're losing peripheral vision. That's why after the age of 40, you often hear the recommendation that you get your eyes checked every couple of years because you won't know. You won't feel a thing, usually. First time you're aware of it, you start bumping into door frames. You start tripping over things. Your peripheral field is narrowing. So what does glaucoma typically affect? Typically, it affects your mobility. So if I'm walking down the street and I can't see what's at my feet, I'm going to trip and kill myself, aren't I? Mobility is the number one thing. But again, glaucoma is very complex and it can also eventually affect your central vision. It's not a fun thing. None of these conditions are. So treatments for glaucoma. Can I ask you, ma'am, are you having any treatments?
I have. I've had surgery for one thing. When I had the cataracts removed, he put a drain in my right eye. And recently, it seemed like it was not working. So just yesterday, or no, a week ago, he did what he calls a sweep and went in, and my pressure went from 26 to 19 to 8 within 5 minutes time once he opened that drain up. And it's functioning again.
Opening the drain. So pressure is building up in her eye. Surgery can be done to get the flow going again. Thank you. Okay. So I would say though that surgery is something that can be done for glaucoma, but what's the number one thing? Drops. Yes. Okay. And the drops have been used for decades. They are used to reduce the pressure that build up when the circulation of the vitreous isn't working right. The drops. And I also will say you have to be diligent with the drops. You have to. You can lose vision if you lose consistency with your drops. Okay. Drops and surgery. So I worked for about 30 years out in the field with people living with vision impairment. And the number one condition I saw was macular degeneration every day, macular degeneration, glaucoma. But there are other conditions too. does anyone in this room, other than Julie on the panel, does anyone in the room have diabetes? You do. Okay. So I don't want to get too depressing about diabetes. I know diabetes is a real, I mean, it's system-wide, isn't it? It impacts everything. And it can also impact your vision. So it's the circulatory system that's involved. The retina, as I said, is nourished by blood vessels. And with diabetes, as your blood sugars kind of go up and down. So with diabetes, you also get those rogue blood vessels growing, right? But they're not just in the macula, they're all over the retina. So the difference with diabetic eye disease, you're getting those rogue blood vessels, which are rogue because the walls of the blood vessels are weak and they burst and bleed into the retina. And that can be in your entire field of vision, blotchy patches here and there, not just your central vision. It's affected by blood sugar levels. People whose blood sugars are erratic are affected more. And treatments, similar to macular degeneration, there are injections that do the same thing, inhibit the growth of those rogue blood vessels. There are surgery, there's all kinds of things for diabetes. But the number one thing for diabetics is to keep a consistent low blood sugar. Easier said than done, I know. Okay, and then finally, another condition that I saw fairly often was stroke. Now, the way that vision works, we talked about this earlier with the optic nerve taking those electric impulses up to the brain. In the brain, of course, we have a visual cortex. Believe me, you guys, I'm not medically trained. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. But I know we have a left and a right visual cortex in our brain. The optic nerve is sending those impulses up to the visual cortex, which is then developing them. What happens in a stroke? Blood flow to the brain is affected, oxygen is affected, and the visual cortex is damaged, both sides. So when someone has hemianopia or hemianopsia from a stroke, what it is they've lost vision in the same area in both eyes. For example, the left field of vision in both eyes, the right field of vision in both eyes, and so forth. So it's a very tricky situation to deal with because it's not like your vision is blurry. It's no vision. There's just an area of no vision. And often people won't even realize I'm not seeing the left, and they'll bump into stuff or not being able to read. There's all kinds of effects. So what do we do for people with strokes? We train, we try and do things visually that will pull their vision into the area where they don't have vision. For example, if you don't have vision on the left side and you're trying to read, well, in English, we read left to right, don't we? So someone with a left side hemianopsia may not even see the left side and they'll start reading in the middle of the sentence. We would use something very bright to try and pull their vision over and kind of force them to look into that field of vision that's not there. So it's hard to do. Stroke is difficult. It affects the people in many, many different ways, but we try. Okay. That is a really quick look at the eye, at what happens as we age. We get those floaters, cataracts, presbyopia, and then the basic eye conditions that are here today. We're going to next talk about the emotional component of dealing with a diagnosis of vision loss. And then after the break, we'll talk a little bit about very easy strategies to cope with these things. Okay? Any questions? Anybody want to ask anything at all? We're going to take a break.
Thank you. We're going to take a break and work on the audio real quick. So 15-minute break. Zoom, we're really glad you're here. So we're going to make this work, but we'll take a 15-minute break right now. Thank you. Hey, I think we're ready to come back from our break. Thanks, everyone. Welcome back.
I just wanted to say a word before I turn over to Julie. For the Zoom folks, if you do have any questions about anything that any of us have said, please ask us. How do they do that?
Yeah, you can raise a hand or write in the chat. I don't know if you can raise your hand. Is that Alt-Y or raise your hand, or ideally write your question in the chat and Riley, who is managing chat, will read it out to us.
So just to introduce Julie, for 30 years, I worked out in the field with people who are losing their vision later in life. And these were often folks who had planned on traveling in retirement and had all these big plans that got turned upside down by a diagnosis of serious vision impairment. Nobody enjoys being told they're visually impaired. Nobody enjoys vision impairment at all. It is something to cope with. It is very serious and can be traumatic. And that's why we treat it seriously. And Julie's going to talk to you a little bit about coping methods for dealing with the emotions that come with it.
Microphone on. Am I loud enough? Okay, yeah. My husband tells me my voice is too loud. So anyway, well, welcome everyone. I'm just tickled to be here and tickled that you're here. And I'm going to just start out with a small version of my story because that's not my main focus. My main focus is you, but I want you to know where I'm coming from. I was a preemie baby and born in the 50s. A lot of babies that were preemies, they were realizing were having vision problems and they didn't know what was going on. Now they call it retinopathy of prematurity. They used to have a fancy name for it, but anyway, what they believe is the pure oxygen in the incubator, because of being preemie, was scarring the retina. The retinas were underdeveloped when you're a preemie. I was only 2 pounds. I have a twin sister who is 3 pounds. A lot of twins are preemies also. And my twin sister was in the incubator 3 weeks less than me because she was larger. She does not have any visual issues or problems. So I was born visually impaired, and I stayed visually impaired until I went totally blind. And I'll tell you about that story in a moment. I was fortunate as a child in that I was able to learn Braille and learn keyboarding, etc. Those were the skills that I was able to develop. I went through school, went to college, and completed my bachelor's in social work. And I started on a graduate program to get my master's in social work. After my first year, it was quite an experience. I was living in Eastern Washington, which was very sunny, and it was a day in May, and a roommate, a co-student, and I were renting a house together. And I shouted to her and I said, "Where's the sun?" And she said, "What do you mean, where's the sun? You live in Eastern Washington." Anyway, called my parents. We rushed to Seattle and saw a renowned retina specialist here in Seattle. And I knew that I wasn't seeing that day. Nothing was showing. And he kind of put his hand, and maybe some of you have had this experience, I don't know, on my shoulder. And he goes, "Oh, no big deal. You'll be fine." And my parents were sobbing in the corner. They cared very much about me. And my dad was saying, "I'll sell my house. I'll do anything if you will work with her and help her at least regain the vision she had." Well, that was the beginning of a new life for me. I had gone from being visually impaired to being totally blind. And a person might think being totally blind, and mine was again, overnight, well, no big deal. You're already visually impaired. It doesn't matter that much. And I can share with you, I went through every stage that we're going to talk about, the stages of vision loss during my experience. So it really wasn't less of an experience because it was a huge change for me. My problem was I wanted to complete that degree. I had one more year left. I knew I had a 6-month internship to complete. I had orals to complete and a thesis to complete. Okay, Lord, how's this going to happen? I was still in class, and finally a professor called me into his office and said, "Julie, I don't know if you know what you're doing, but you're sitting in the corner crying, and we can't have you doing that. You need to go home at least for 3 months. Be with your family, see if you can get some TLC, and then you can start your internship. And if you can, pass your orals, if you can get your thesis written and it passes, you can come back, graduate with your class, and then go complete your internship." He was very wise. I had no idea this was all happening. And I can share with you, I lost 70 pounds during that time. I don't recommend doing it that way, but obviously it was considered circumstantial depression that I was going through. And many of you may go through and have gone through and maybe will go through that. I spent time with my family, and it was a good time. I didn't want to do anything. I was depressed and I was scared to death. How am I going to do an internship, etc.? Could not find an internship in the town I was in. I had to move to a whole new town in Eastern Washington. And I started thinking, Hannah, how is this going to work? I'm newly totally blind. I need to move to a new town, one of the most difficult changes for me was my mobility. I had used what vision I had to get around. I did use a white cane. Finally, as a teenager, I agreed to use it. I didn't want to use it before. But getting around was a huge change. And I found an apartment and had to walk about a mile to where I was doing my internship. That was good. I mean, because otherwise I would have just sat and not developed any mobility or travel skills. I had to, I didn't have a choice. I can tell you in that town, I was, I didn't want to get out of bed, but I had that internship to complete. In many cases, I was resentful that I was right in the middle of what I wanted to accomplish and lost my vision. But in many cases, that was the best thing that could have happened to me because I was going to complete that degree come hell or high water. I'd worked hard to get there and I'm going to complete it. So in some ways, that was good. But I can tell you, I remember I had a rocking chair in my apartment, and I remember rocking and saying, and I believe in the Lord. And I said, Lord, are you kidding me? I'm never going to see the sun again. I can't believe it. And the other thing I was feeling sad about, my twin sister, I thought, I'm never going to see her face again. What I remember of her was her high school graduation picture. She's quite funny. I told her that several years later. I said, when I think of you in my head, I see your high school senior picture. And she goes, good, I haven't changed. Anyway, so that's my story. I did complete the degree, went back and completed the internship, and then about a year later, moved to Seattle and started my job as a social worker. But I can tell you it was extremely painful time. Not only did I have to adjust, and another reality for me besides my travel was the adjustment to seeing myself. I'm not visually impaired anymore. I had to re-identify myself. I'm totally blind. I couldn't believe it. It was a huge readjustment in regard to my identity. And so I, completed, moved to Seattle, things turned out okay, but it was still an adjustment, you guys. And I can honestly tell you, for about 2 years, any free time I had, which I didn't have a ton, but any free time I had, I could sit there and think, I still can't believe it. I'm not going to see this again or that again. I didn't have a ton of vision. I always told people that if I needed to really see you, I'd have to kiss you. A lot of people didn't agree and didn't want to do that, right? So I didn't have a ton, but I had enough that it was a huge change. We're going to talk about families adjusting, families and your realm of influence, your support system. Not only are you losing vision, but they are too. And I went through that with my family and friends. I had all the students I was going to graduate school with, and they knew I was losing vision, and they wanted me to scream and yell, and we were studying, for Pete's sake, anger therapy, right? That's ridiculous. And they wanted me to be angry, and they wanted me to swear. They thought, you'll feel better if you just get mad. I did have some anger, but it wasn't the way they wanted me to do it, and we'll talk about the anger that you're naturally going to feel. So those 2 years, huge adjustment. Again, I was fortunate because I had a huge goal and I was needed to keep very busy, but it is a huge change in your life. My family had to readjust. My twin sister, who always deep down felt a little guilty about her not experiencing any vision loss, when I lost my vision, she pushed away. She was pushing me away, not seeming to want to talk. And finally I said, we've got to talk. What is wrong? And she just broke down in tears and she goes, I feel even more guilty now. You at least used to have some vision, but now you're totally blind. We had to work through it. My parents felt terribly guilty. Poor things. I remember when I went home for that 3 months, I'll just share with you. I was the social worker in the house and I kept supporting them every time they felt sad. They had nothing to be guilty about, but they felt guilty and they would express their feelings. And I remember one day, I don't know, I'd say it's about after being home a month, I said, you guys, it's my turn. I need to cry. Let me cry. Let me tell you how I feel. I was trying to be the strong one to support my family. So the reality is, all of you, not only are you going through this transition, but so is your family and support system. It's important that both of you have a chance to express your feelings, and both of you may need to readjust like my sister and I did. So declining vision is not easy. Yours is most likely different than mine in that I lost what I had overnight and yours is gradual. You know, I've thought about it a lot and I thought, which is better, to lose it quickly like I did or to lose it gradually? I honestly think both have their pros and cons. I'll just share with you a bit about working with people who are blind and visually impaired. I started teaching under Keiko when she managed the program in 95, part-time, all this back and forth, part-time, full-time, etc. And found that that was my passion. My passion was supporting people who were losing their vision or had lost their vision. I was privileged to be able to work in that field. Not only did I have passion, I had compassion. Having lost vision, I knew it was an easy street. Some people who maybe are congenitally blind and have never seen would have more difficulty in understanding the pain that people are going through. So I was very fortunate to work in that area. I ended up getting married. We got married later on, but I got married in 2005. I married a man who was considered, we used to call the word high partial, meaning he had quite a bit of vision. He could almost read regular print, some magnification when we got married, and he would see street signs, etc. So anyway, we were doing fine for 4 years. And he called me one night. I was still working at CPS at night. And he called and said, the doctor wants to do an experimental process on my eyes. And I said, well, why? No. I said, that's a stupid thing to do. You don't do any experiments with your eyes being so fragile. I got into profession mode. He chose to do it and he lost his vision overnight. He ended up in that surgery and it hemorrhaged and he lost his eye. I must say the medical system tried 9 surgeries on him that year. That was quite a year. And I have to give him tons of credit for going through all the pain and those 9 surgeries to regain his vision. He did not regain it. So not only did I experience it myself, not only did I work in the field, but then I married a man who experienced it. For a man, I have complete conviction that it's harder in working with blind, visually impaired people losing their vision and being with my husband. Very hard for a man. My husband was very fortunate. He has excellent mobility skills, excellent spatial orientation. He didn't have to worry about that. When I think of him, for him, it was the self-identification that I think was the hardest. So anyway, that's just blindness all around me, just letting you know that. And that's who I am. I want to talk to you about the stages of vision loss. And it's interesting because you might think, wouldn't it be nice if I could start at stage 1, go to stage 2, go to stage 3? It doesn't work that way. And it did not for me. And I doubt it will for you either. Stages are fluid. And I can tell you one day I woke up, I can conquer the world. I'm going to make this. The next day I would wake up and I had a hard time getting out of bed. I didn't even want to live. So these stages go back and forth, they're fluid, but I think if I share them with you, you're going to see yourself in some of them. And they tend to be somewhat progressive. We hope they do. Many people often get stuck in the depression stage. We're hoping that doesn't happen for anyone because the biggest message I want to let you know, there is life after blindness, just tons of life available to you. I know many of you might think, I can't imagine that. And many of you are not going to lose all your vision. That's just a reality, especially with macular. I think from what Jane said and from what I've heard, who knows about glaucoma, but macular, usually people maintain some vision, but it doesn't mean that life doesn't change for you. Huge changes. We'll talk about some of those in just a minute, but there's a couple that have written a lot about vision loss, and their names are Dean and Naomi Tuttle. They're kind of the textbook gurus for people getting, degrees in how to deal with trauma, blindness, etc. According to them, they've identified 7 stages, and they relate kind of. If any of you have ever studied Kubler-Ross's stages of loss, where people that are dying, the hospice movement, etc., they're similar. They have, when I studied that, 5 stages, but these Dean and Naomi have come up with 7. The first one is trauma, and this is truly unexpected vision loss. You go to the doctor, they kind of pat you on the shoulder, maybe like he did me, and I'm sorry, you have a vision problem. You really can hardly believe it, and your mind goes crazy, and you start thinking of maybe your vision of blind or visually impaired people. Blindness is one of the lowest incidents of disability. So many people have never even met a blind or visually impaired person. There are not that many of us around, really. So you might think, oh my gosh, I've seen these weird people on TV. I've seen a person walk down the sidewalk, maybe with a guide dog or a cane. Your mind can just go crazy, but it's trauma. You are traumatized just like I was sitting in that doctor's office, and so are your loved ones. So that's stage number one. Number two, sometimes can happen and last a long time, and that's called shock and denial. And that's the stage where once I'm not so traumatized I can't even eat, I'm in total shock. And I'm sure the doctor didn't know what he was talking about. What's the matter with him? I'm going to get a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion. And people around me might say, I see that you don't see as well as you did. Well, no, I don't know what your problem is. That's not true. You're in denial and you're in shock. And like I said, this stage can last a long time. It's just almost impossible to think that you need to do anything to change. You really are not thinking about learning blindness skills that Jane and Keiko with resources or blindness skills are going to talk more about. You're really just stuck and you are in this huge denial stage. Usually you think it's going to come back. Modern technology, we're in 2025 now. Most likely I should be able to get the vision that I've lost back. That is a really strong feeling you have in the denial stage. It's often also something that you don't want to talk about with your loved ones at that point. You can find yourself almost biting your loved ones' heads off. Don't tell me that I don't see as well. Don't tell me anything has changed, etc. And it's also easy to deny, and as Jane pointed out, one of the things that we most cherish in our society and we as people and as adults is driving. And that's going to be a huge section in the denial phase of when you're going through that. Before I go on, I'm going to stop about after every 2 stages and just ask for anyone that wants to contribute and suggest maybe you understand those 2 stages, again, trauma and shock and denial. Any of you experience that? I don't want it to just be me up here talking. Feel free to answer either in person or on Zoom.
When I first got the diagnosis that I had macular degeneration, I was 40 years old.
You were young.
And I denied that for 10 years.
Yes.
Finally, at age 50, I began praying about it, but
Yes.
I was still in denial.
Yes.
And now I'm still praying about it, but I'm realizing I've got to prepare. And that's why I'm here.
Amen. I'm so glad you're here, Anne. And it's a reality, that denial stage, isn't it? I mean, it's just a reality. I don't believe it. And the fact that you think, okay, a miracle's going to happen. You said we're praying. Often think that a miracle will happen. This can't really be happening to me. On and on. That denial is huge. And we get very stuck in that stage. You're so stuck that you most likely don't want to move forward because things are going to change. It's not real. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else experience either trauma or the denial stage? Yes.
I don't know where to hold this, but I'm wondering, I've had a hearing problem for many years. I have macular degeneration. And I'm probably losing my driver's license.
Oh,
So
yes.
that's a major life change for me
Huge.
because I beetle around constantly in Sumner and Puyallup.
Yay. Oh, sorry.
So taking all those things away, and what
Yes.
I've learned in life with older people is you have to be you have to have a purpose.
Yes.
And I don't have any anymore. So
Mm,
what am I going to do? I don't have a degree in college,
right.
and can't read, have a hard time hearing tapes, and know where to go. I do have a big support system,
Good.
which is great, but I've always been very, very independent, and
Yes.
it kills me to ask somebody to do something. So as I was crying the other day to my sister, how do you find a purpose with all that?
Let me give some ideas for you too about purpose. And you're dealing with not only hearing loss is huge. So dealing with a dual diagnosis, there's what you're saying, dual issues, dual sensory loss. Plus being a senior, let's face it, our purpose changes as we're seniors, blind or sighted. So let me give you some idea. What was your name again? Hi, Cindy. Cindy? Cindy. Okay, let me talk about some ideas. Thank you for sharing that though. And I appreciate you being so willing to. The next two stages we're going to talk about. The next one is called mourning and withdrawal, MOURNING, not the morning that you get up, but anyway. This stage is when you really, the sadness truly takes over. You've been denying it, but all of a sudden you're feeling very, very sad. I just can't believe this is happening. The whole entire family, remember, gets involved in this. And this is the inability to drive, like you said, means that loved ones might have to get more involved. And we're going to talk about dependence and interdependence, which relates to what you just said. But this is a hard time you're mourning, and you tend to withdraw. You tend to not want to be. I found myself withdrawing, you guys, when I lost my vision. I didn't want to be around people. I had a friend who annoyed me terribly. She kept wanting to come visit me. I didn't want her to visit me. I didn't want to be around anyone. I went and did my internship and wanted to, cloister up in my little apartment and not see anyone. It's easy to think that I can't do anything I used to, kind of like what you're saying, Cindy. I can't do those things anymore. And you withdraw from friends and people. It's one of the worst things we can do because we need people desperately. But it's a sad time. You're mourning the losses. You're mourning the fact you can't drive. You're mourning the fact that you can't see people's faces like you used to. You're mourning the fact that you can't read the same way you used to. It's a hard time, and you do tend to withdraw. One of the best things that family members and support systems can do is keep you from withdrawing. That's one of the best, like my friend who was annoying me terribly. She'd call and say, I'm coming. And I would say, no, I don't need any company. Well, I'm coming anyway. She was smart. But your friends and family, the more they can keep you engaged, it's easy. And we must remember that they're mourning too. That's one of the hardest things to even realize is, like I said about my family, when I was helping them with their mourning, and then I realized, wait a minute, we're all mourning together. The next stage they talk about is called succumbing. Yes. Oh, yes, sorry.
Mourning, it's a factor in depression.
Yes.
Depression can be an onset from a loss, whether that's a perceived loss or a physical loss.
Yes.
And these stages are very applicable for no matter what it is in your life.
Very much. This is not just dealing with blindness stuff. They adopted these, but this is for any kind of loss. You are so right. Very much. The next stage relates to what you said about depression, and it's succumbing in depression. And this occurs when a person really can't come to grips with it. And again, here we're talking about blindness and low vision. And it's really a feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. And in this phase, the person just doesn't want to do anything. Like I said, they just retreat. They're likely to stop everything that they were doing, nor can they believe that there's a way to do these things. This depression stage, often you feel sadness, you feel self-pity, you just really can get very stuck here. Some people deal with just depression in general, and that's harder when you're dealing with this kind of issue that causes circumstantial depression on top of depression. It can be very hard. And they call it circumstantial depression when it's very much related to your loss. So those stages all kind of go together. They really do. I mean, succumbing in despair and depression. The key for all of us is to try and not stay stuck in that depression stage. And some people do. When we've worked with students that have come to our orientation and training center, many come with huge issues of depression. I used to say blindness wasn't really the main issue that people had to deal with often as they were losing their vision, because the other stuff can overtake people. Understandably so. This is when it's best to reach out to counselors, to reach out to other blind and visually impaired people. I'm going to put a plug in for consumer organizations. And these are organizations that are run and organized and developed by blind people themselves. They're both have national organizations, but we have ones in the state and we have local chapters. One is called National Federation of the Blind and one is called the Washington Council of the Blind. I can't tell you how many people, I'm involved with the Washington Council, have come to these consumer organizations and said it's the organization and connecting with other blind people that gave them their lives back. It's almost like having your built-in support group. And we recommend it to people losing their vision. We did, the Orientation and Training Center. I recommend it to all of you. And I'm sure it's on the resource list that Keiko will be talking about, these consumer organizations. So key to get in touch. Oh, I talked too much. She just I just briefly want to go through the other stages. And the next one is reassessment and reaffirmation. And this is a stage when you finally find yourself digging out of the hole. Okay, I've been depressed long enough. I've stayed in bed every morning for too long. Nothing's getting done. People are having to help me too much. Maybe I can make it. Maybe I can learn new skills or connect with people who know what I'm going through. And you just I call it kind of dipping your head up out of the hole. It's a reassessment, reaffirmation, and this is exciting when this stage begins to happen. Number 6 is called coping and mobilization. This is when people start, again, reaching out and saying, okay, I'm not independent anymore. And I appreciate, Cindy, what you said about that. One of the most difficult things to deal with, and I've had to deal with it all my life as a visually impaired and totally blind person. I was raised to think I could do everything on my own. I appreciate my parents and teachers for doing that because they wanted me to be as independent as possible. The truth is nobody's totally independent. You guys, that was so exciting when I realized that. We're all interdependent. We all depend on other people in some ways. It's just going to be different. One thing to remember more than anything is you're the same person. Even though you are visually impaired, even though you're losing your vision, even though you're getting older, you're still you. Yay! That was so exciting when I realized that for myself because I saw myself so differently being totally blind. It hit me one day, but I'm still Julie. I still have the same personality. I still have likes and dislikes, same ones. I still have the same skills, talents, etc. I still have all the annoyances that I carry with me. Anyway, you're the same person. And it's exciting when you can get your loved ones and social sphere to treat you that way and see you that way. You will be dependent in a different way, but it's interdependence. And it's exciting when you realize that not only are you depending on people around you, they depend on you too. It's not just one way, and it won't be one way. You just have to sit and realize who you are, what you have to give, and what you can accomplish, and how you can help others. I want to go back to Cindy's question about purpose. Cindy, when one of the main purposes, I mean, a lot of seniors feel like they've lost their purpose, especially if you retire, all these things. Not only getting connected with consumer organizations truly can help you find a new purpose in life. And I've heard that from many people who have done that because those organizations crave people to come do work for them and get things accomplished. So anyway, hopefully we can maybe talk more about that or whatever. The last thing I just want to share is it's called self-acceptance and self-esteem. Oh yes. Okay, Zoom.
You repeat the 6th stage? It was coping and
let me go back to it here. See if I can, how good I am at finding my Braille here. And I'll go over the 7 stages. Why don't I do that when we're done with this last stage, which won't take long. I'll be glad to do that because it's hard to remember them all. This last stage, you guys, is called self-acceptance and self-esteem. And in this phase, an individual realizes they're themselves, they're someone of value, they might have an eye condition, but that's just one of their quote-unquote attributes. I always tell people I'm a person first, and blindness happens to be a characteristic. Isn't that exciting when you can come to that point and realize that? So let me just go through the stages again, because we went through them fairly quickly. Phase 1 is trauma, and then phase 2. I gotta find it here in my Braille, not easy to go through these. Let me find it here. Okay, phase 2 is shock and denial. Yes, thank you. They really have, and I appreciate it. Phase 3 is mourning and withdrawal. And then phase 4 is succumbing and depression. And phase 5, getting there. Phase 5 is reassessment and reaffirmation. So you can tell 5, 6, and 7 are again when the light is dawning and your head is coming out of the hole, basically is how I think of it. And then 6 is coping and mobilization. And then the last one is, let me find it here. It was called self-acceptance and self-esteem. We have a tiny bit of time for a few more questions, either in the room or on Zoom or comments. Nothing in the room? How about Zoom? Hey, that rhymes.
There is something.
Oh, there's. Getting a microphone to you.
I'm overwhelmed with the fact that all of these things I'm experiencing. I just didn't put a name on them.
Yes,
And I've
yes.
been getting, feeling sadder and sadder and
Yes,
sadder and
yes.
wondering, where am I going?
Yes.
I'm 90. I'll be 90 this year.
Oh, I'm impressed.
And I've been studying piano for 10 years after raising kids and having a career and
Yes.
having the best time. And now I can hardly see the damn notes. And it just drives me crazy.
Can I connect you? I don't know how to get all this information to you. There is a fellow who is teaching blind people piano. I can connect you with him.
I would love that.
Yeah. What's your name again?
Virginia.
Okay. I'll get this information to Danielle to get out to you. Brent is his name. Brent Boone. Yeah. You know Brent. Can you get it to her? Yeah.
Thank
He's a kick and a half. He'd love to have an already pianist in his classroom. So
Loved getting back to it. And I'm studying with a woman, but she doesn't really understand that I can't always see
Yes.
the markings. And
Yes.
she gets a little
annoyed and
with me.
testy and
She's 80 and an accomplished teacher. I was lucky to find her and I've had a wonderful experience.
yeah.
And now I'm not liking it. so
It's not,
much.
no, it's not the same.
Mhm.
And it's hard when it makes you feel bad and you don't need that hole again. So I hear you.
And I'm sort of an upbeat person. And
Yes.
right now I'm sliding off.
I hope I'm as
Yeah.
astute as you are at 90, my dear. Anyway. Yeah, thank you. One more question in the room? Okay.
My name is Anne, and it's more of an observation that because of being in this class,
Yes.
is that there's a tendency in all of us to think that once we master these steps or these protocols, life will get good again.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing, we're going to have to be reassessing that all the time. We are never going to be done with coming to terms with where we are and where we're going to be. Does that make sense?
It does. Remember I said that stages are fluid and it's back and forth and back and forth. I think you honestly find a time, though, when self-acceptance can start to happen. It doesn't mean that the next day when something happens that, say, you wanted to go somewhere, couldn't get in the car, and the realization is I can't drive, I'm not as independent as I used to be. My husband still deals with all of that stuff, you guys, and he's been, now totally blind for about 15 years. So I'm not saying it'll be peachy keen and roses completely, and you will go back and forth and deal with all that. That's very normal. But you should find yourself hopefully progressing into a point where you can see some light at the end of the tunnel. Joseph, yes.
I'm having issues dealing with what I can do,
Mhm.
and I can't think outside the box to figure out. Like, I'd like to volunteer or do something with my time, but I can't read, I can't do anything, I can't see at all. And it's new to me, so I can't really
Yes.
figure out what I can do.
Yes, I hear you. I'll be honest with you, society sometimes doesn't know what we can do either. And we have to deal with that. If you go up somewhere and say, I'd like to volunteer for you, part of these stages, you're going to have to learn to be a self-advocate. And I'm just telling you, because I know I've had to advocate for many, many years. Not every job requires reading, not every job requires writing. And I'm going to go back to this consumer organizations, Joseph. I'd love to be able to connect you with one of them. You will find blind people who are doing all kinds of things. And one of the best ways to figure out what you can do is to connect with other blind, visually impaired people. It's a wonderful resource. Maybe I could write up a snippet that Danielle could send out for both organizations. Is that possible?
Yeah, I can send something out to people. I've got most people's contact information.
Right.
Also, just a plug, one of the organizations, their convention
Yes.
is coming up the end of the month.
Yes.
It's in Vancouver, so it's not local. The conventions move around each year.
Yes.
But their convention starts February 27th and goes through March 2nd in Vancouver. If anyone, Washington. So if anyone wants more information on that, I can share that with you also. That's the National Federation of the Blind of Washington.
Right.
The Washington Council of the Blind's convention was the end of October, beginning of November.
Right.
Their convention will be around the same time this year.
We'll send you out. I'll do a write-up if that's okay with Danielle, and get information sent to you about both and about their conventions. It so helps. I can't tell you how much it's going to help you to connect with blind and visually impaired people who are functioning well. I mean, and many of them have been through the loss, many of them. We have oh yes, okay.
I just want to make a comment because I have health issues that are more woman issues. And so
Yeah.
for me, I've found a lot of solace in some of the Facebook groups.
Yes.
And I don't know if
point.
that's an option for some of the
Yes.
people here
Yes.
with the computers that you can put bigger letters or stuff on so you can figure out which buttons there are, but that's an option. I know
Yes.
social media is a little bit harder for older people just because it's newer and it's also something to learn
But I agree.
learn.
It's
But
wonderfully
I just
supportive.
wondered if that is something that you guys are aware of, or if somebody else has created that as like a Facebook group for people to reach out and see, okay, this is what I did to help me with this, as far as the stages that you were talking about.
Yes. You know, I don't know of any particular, but it certainly is a good start. And I agree with you. Facebook groups can be so helpful. When I broke my shoulder, I was on suffering through broken shoulders. Anyway, and that Facebook group, it helped me more than anything. I didn't feel nearly as alone. So anyway, I hear you. Thank you for that reminder. Take some skill to get there to learn, and good for you that you can. Do we have any on Zoom? Jane, gotcha.
Watching you use your Braille.
Oh yeah.
I want to know more about it, because how did you get it on the paper? How did you write your presentation? And now I see your hands moving over it ever so carefully. I know nothing about Braille.
Well, there's a workshop that Keiko's doing that I recommend. It's just kind of learning what is all about. I've been a long time Braille reader, so that makes a difference too. And I'm an avid I love reading, so, but it can happen. Braille can happen. It's not as easy when you're a senior, I'll be honest with you. It's just not, to be honest, but it's fascinating to learn about it.
Yeah, our Touch of Braille workshop will be here at the library in person on March 25th in the afternoon. And so you'll get an introduction to tactily reading the Braille alphabet and ways that you can use Braille at home that will be helpful in your daily life. And so that will be Keiko, and I'll be there, and there'll be Jane will be there as well. So, and we embossed Julie's Braille.
They
for
did
her
it
here
Yeah.
on our Braille embosser.
Yeah, because mine's broken.
Yeah.
Like a Braille printer.
It's a big machine.
It's a Braille printer.
Yeah. But we better move on to Jane. We're
Thank you
running
all
a little behind.
for your input.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so when somebody like the Lighthouse, or in the old days Sight Connection, learned about Anne, or any of you, when we heard about you, somebody like me would go to your house. And then I would sit with you and I'd start talking to you about the problems that you're having. Are you having trouble reading, writing? Can you use your appliances? Can you walk outside, and so forth? So it was my job to try and help you find ways around your vision impairment. And initially, we would always use really simple concepts because they're the concepts that really matter. And so There's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of fancy things that will make life easier, and we will talk about that later. But first of all, you can make some simple changes to your world. I call them the 4 Bs. And like I said, I'm warning you guys, this is nothing fancy or in any way difficult. The 4 Bs: make it bigger, make it bolder, make it brighter, make it bumpier. So it's pretty obvious. When you have vision problems, making it bigger usually helps. Not always. With glaucoma, if you have tunnel vision, making it bigger won't necessarily happen. I'm going to switch to this side over here. So how can we make things bigger? First and most obvious way is by magnifying them, right? And maybe you have tried some magnifiers. I'm holding up a couple of handheld magnifiers in front of me. Magnifiers are very varied. There are different kinds of magnifiers. There are different strengths of magnifiers. Can you guys tell me, those of you who can see what I'm holding in front of me, can you tell me how these 2 magnifiers are different? Size. Okay. So handheld magnifiers, stand magnifiers, they are different in size, they're different in strength, they're different in many ways. Let's talk about size first. The bigger they are, the weaker they are. This is with a handheld glass magnifier. This is something I really want to get across to you today. As magnifiers, glass magnifiers, as they get stronger, they get smaller. Okay? And as they get stronger and smaller, you've got to bring them closer and closer to your eye. You cannot read. I'm holding a very powerful magnifier. This one is actually 12 times. Pretty strong. This one, in order to read with it, I would have to hold it literally to my eye. This distance, it's upside down. It doesn't work. So powerful magnifiers, small, have to bring them closer.
How did you know how strong that was?
Because I read it, it says it on it.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, I cheated. I knew it was strong. I didn't know how strong. So, okay. So hand magnifiers, these are the type of spyglasses that you hold away from the object and you try and find the right distance. Okay, and some people are nodding. They know that you, oh my God, where is it going to be in focus? That's a hand magnifier. What makes it handy is that you can put it in your pocket. You can take it with you. It's convenient. By the way, for those of you living with macular degeneration, your magnifiers should be illuminated. They should have a light in them because light is important. Bigger, bolder, brighter. Light is important. So handheld magnifiers, you have to find the right distance. We also have stand magnifiers. Now with these, you don't have to do that kind of finding the right, it just sits on the page. That distance is already set for you. So you have to bring the whole thing up to your eye. That is a stand magnifier, sits on the page. Yeah.
S-T-A-N-D.
I know it should be a sit magnifier, shouldn't it? Because it's on the page, for God's sakes. Jeez. Okay. But again, you know, I have 2 stand magnifiers here. And for those of you who might be able to see, one of them is much smaller. The glass is much smaller, much stronger. So the reason I'm really emphasizing this is that people will do things like buy a big plastic screen to sit in front of their TV, maybe make them see their TV. Have any of you wasted your money on one of those? There's a hand up back there. Total waste of money. So something big, a big screen like that or a big piece of plastic, it is going to be weak and it's going to be too weak for all of you, unless you have normal vision, in which case it won't help you that much anyway. Okay, so hand magnifiers, stand magnifiers, the stronger they are, the smaller they are. The stronger and smaller, the closer you have to bring them to your eye. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? Hi.
Is there such a thing as a magnifier, let's say, that sits up on legs that you can put a book under?
So she's asking me, is there a magnifier that sits on legs that you can slide a book under? Yes, those exist. Are they easy to use? Heck no. So, but there are other options for that, and I'm getting to it. Hang on a second. So besides the hand magnifier and the stand or sit magnifier, there's also spectacle magnifiers. So really thick lens, really strong reading glasses. Oh my Lord, you are all just a big blur. Where did I put my thing? There it is. So again, powerful spectacle magnifiers. I've got to bring it this close. Anything further, it's a total blur. So remember that concept. As your magnifying device gets stronger, it'll get smaller, and you've got to bring it closer to your eye. That is really hard for people to adjust to. Everybody wants to read at the normal reading distance, again, because you guys have had normal vision all of your lives. And you guys, yes, you have a Zoom question.
Comments, one being that the iPhone has a built-in lighted magnifier. The other comment is the accessibility feature on my cell has magnifying feature with light under visibility enhancement.
Got some people who are really experienced on Zoom today. So yes, technology is another, and we're going to come to technology. Thank you, Zoom commenters. So these are the basic ways before we get to technology. But yes, glass magnifiers, either in a hand, a stand, or spectacle magnifiers, these are probably going to be your first options. They're portable, they're less expensive, they're simple to use. Okay? We also have electronic magnifiers, and I've got an example of one over here. This is what's called a closed circuit television, or CCTV. A closed circuit television is warming up at the moment. Okay, so for those of you in the room and on Zoom who can see this, this is taking a camera, which is looking down onto a table where I have a piece of paper all about macular degeneration. The camera looks down on the paper and then magnifies it up on a monitor. This is electronic magnification. It is the bee's knees, the cat's meow. It is the best thing. So the question about the stand that you'd slide a book under, yes, those exist. This is better. Yeah. So what's so great about CCTVs, closed circuit televisions? When you need really powerful magnification and you need strong magnification, with these handheld magnifiers, you're stuck with a really tiny glass because it's powerful, right? Like I said. So the only way you can get strong magnification and a big field is with a CCTV. So with a CCTV, I can make it really big. I can make it really bright, really bold. This is the absolute best conditions to use the vision you've got left, a CCTV. Okay? Oh, what do they cost? She's asking me. So when I started working back in the 90s in the Stone Age, they were like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Now they're around $2,500. There are many programs around the Puget Sound area, not just in King County. There are many programs which will provide you with a CCTV. So again, after I finish talking, Keiko's going to talk a bit about resources, but there are organizations who will help you get a CCTV if you cannot afford one. But they are really fantastic. And you know what else? Now they also scan and they'll read back to you what's on the screen, so you don't have to. So if you're a partially sighted person and you can kind of read, but not really, there's some really excellent choices out there right now in CCTVs. Okay, so magnification is one way to go about it. That is the bigger. Make it bigger. Of course, you can also get large print. There are still some large print books out there. There's large print magazines, but I don't think there are many because print magazines are kind of disappearing. So, and also we had the Zoom commenters. There are phones that have magnifiers on it. There's all kinds of technology out there that will also help you with magnification. So that's the bigger thing. Bolder. I really want to push this bolder thing because we don't think about it enough. Making things so you can, they're not only big, but they're contrasting. This is a calendar from the Lighthouse in Seattle. We used to have one of these at Site Connection too. So Joseph, I'm holding up a really big calendar. Yeah. For the Zoom folks, this is effective for a visually impaired, partially sighted person, not only because the numbers are big, but because they're bold. Now you can go to Office Depot or Staples and buy a really big calendar with really big letters, but guess what? They're in gray. You can't read them. So being big is not enough. Bigger and bolder. Make it contrast. That's so important. I have a couple of examples here. I'm holding up a white chopping board. Guess what? It's black on the other side. So if you're chopping up onions, chop them on the black. If you're chopping up carrots, chop them on the white. Okay? The Lighthouse has a store that sells this. We're going to plug the Lighthouse a few more times this morning, this afternoon. But yes, utilizing contrast, very important. Keyboards, maybe you guys have seen this, utilizing bigger and bolder, bigger keys, bolder, black numbers on a yellow background. Why do we choose yellow? Because yellow tends to give off less glare and people find it more comfortable. So contrast. We put in your folders today these black 2020 pens. When I was working with people, I often had them write their name, or I would write something in a pen, and then I would write it in the same size with a black felt pen. Which one's easier to read? What do you guys think? Yeah, so just forget about using pencils for sure. But even a ballpoint pen is going to give you so much trouble. If you can't read your own writing, it's guaranteed I can't either. If you can read your own writing, chances are I can. Make it big, make it bold. One more example for you. This is a favorite example of mine. A lot of ladies that I worked with had silver hair. And they would say they'd go into their bathroom and they would try and style their hair, but they couldn't see their hair to style it. And so I would say, well, here's me. I've got this behind I'm holding up a towel. If you have something white behind you and you have brown hair like I do, it's easy to see my hair. If you have silver hair, why not put up, like on your bathroom wall or on the door to your bathroom, whatever's behind your mirror, something dark so that your silver hair shows up. I told you this is not fancy stuff. It's really basic. But just utilizing contrast in your daily lives will make a big difference. Not kidding. So bigger and bolder, brighter. How about lighting? Is lighting important? I think so. Okay, so we have lighting, ambient versus task. Ambient lighting, room lighting, the rooms above us on the ceiling here. What is that for? Just to make sure we don't bump into each other, we can see basic things around us, but it's not meant for reading or needle threading or doing anything in detail. For that, we need task lighting. So some kind of light which you can aim right down on whatever it is you're doing. So this is a task light that's fluorescent, doesn't cast any shadows, it's cool, and you can aim it right down on your table, on your book, whatever you're doing. So task lighting, TASK. So to perform a task, you need light right down on it. You need that light not to come back up through the shade. So you don't want a shade that's translucent or lets light through. You want a shade that's solid and directs the light right down onto what you're doing. Under cupboard lighting in the kitchen is super handy. That's also task lighting. Whenever you're reading, the light behind you, it doesn't have to be behind you. It just has to be not coming up into your eyes. So the thing is, lighting is very important. Lighting is huge for reading, but you may also be experiencing glare from light. So I saw Anne is wearing a pair of glasses. May I ask you, Anne, why do you wear those glasses? May I ask?
Because the glare.
Okay, so even overhead glare in this room is problematic. Yeah.
What time did you wear?
So Anne is wearing a pair of glasses much like these. They're big glasses. Hers are yellow, and they're designed to reduce glare for her. And she got them from the lighthouse. Okay. We need a kit. Okay. Gray, blue for outside. I'm not surprised. Yeah. So again, people are very individual, but in general, the yellow shades that Anne is wearing are good for glare. A lot of people with normalish vision wear yellow glasses at night to drive. It helps with the glare from oncoming headlights. Yeah, which is even worse than it used to be now, but the snow, the glare, yeah.
Sunlight too, because I find not only the glare from lights at night, I don't drive at night, but in the morning if I go out, sometimes the sunshine is right in, I'm flipping down the things in the car, and it's
Mhm.
not enough of that glare. Makes me just want to stop and wait until I go to work.
It's Virginia, right? Virginia. So Virginia's saying that glare is an issue when she goes out in the morning, and would the yellow glasses be good? My answer to that is probably not. Not the yellow. Again, people are very individual, and what we always did, we had a lot of different colors. This is a pair of very, very dark ones. These fit over my glasses. I don't particularly like how they look, but they're effective because they keep glare from coming in from above. They're closed at the top. They're closed at the sides. So from all around, I'm protected from glare. But you may not like brown, Virginia. These are also from the lighthouse. So getting the right glare protection is very individual. You can do this a couple of ways. I know there aren't very many drugstores left in the Seattle area, but if you can find one, most of them do have some version of these big glasses. And just try them. Go to your doctor's office, see if your optician, if they have them. If not, please make a visit to the lighthouse and try them out there. But long story short, lighting is important. The downside is that it can cause glare. Use sunovers, fitovers, use caps, baseball caps, for overhead. Overhead glare is a big problem. Okay. Yes.
Comments. The first being sun visors help with daytime glare, and sun flips also help.
Sun flips.
Sun flip ups,
Yeah.
excuse me, also help.
Yeah, so thank you very much to the Zoom commenter. Yes, sunglasses not to be forgotten, and definitely baseball caps, anything with any kind of a visor to keep the overhead glare from coming down on you. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
I just moved to the cat thing for both my piano practice because I have lights from overhead, but I also have task lighting. But I've started doing this to watch TV at night because we only have a light in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
And you can't turn it down too far.
Mm.
And the screen is so much clearer when I have a cap on. I don't have that light in my face. I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing too, when you start having these problems, if you're adventurous, like kind of what Julie was saying, just kind of see what helps. There are lots of little things. That's why we start with the simple stuff, the bigger, bolder, brighter, bumpier. Having sunglasses in various colors for different situations can be very helpful. Thank you for that, Virginia.
This is kind of a different topic, but I have a sewing machine. And I practically am not using it very much anymore. But threading a needle, this
yeah.
is what I've learned. I can take the needle out, thread it, and then put it back into the machine. But it's time consuming.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Actually, I have thought about bringing a needle threader to this group, and maybe I will next time. My response to that is whatever works for you, do it. I don't know how to sew. I'm so undomestic, but I used to teach people how to thread both sewing machine needles and hand needles. And with sewing machine needles, you can do it without taking the needle off first, for sure. Talk to me later. Talk to me later. We'll talk about that. Okay. Oh. Hi, Ann.
Hi, something that I deal with that may not be average is that my inner ear seems to be affected, and like when I have bad bouts, like at night when I can't see, not only can I not see and can I not balance, but I get nauseous.
Oh, wow.
And driving especially. It's like, that's why I have the corners around here.
Yeah.
And I still have to keep my eyes closed or I get nauseous.
I hope you don't close your eyes when you're driving now. Oh, phew. Okay. You said driving, so I was like, oh. Drives by Braille. Hi, what would you like?
Like sign paper with lines on it that you can see.
Wow, what a good question. Yes, we do have that. And the lighthouse has that. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I keep talking about the lighthouse. By all means, call them. And we have resource information on your folders for the lighthouse, but call them before you go. Okay, but yes, she was asking about thick lined paper. There's actually two different versions of it. One with slightly thick lines and the other with really thick lines. So kind of like what we all learned to write on when we were 7 or 8, remember? See Jane run. Yeah, like that. So yes, that exists.
Is the keyboard you showed us available at the lighthouse?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Somebody else has to hook it up to my.
Yeah, they're pretty easy to hook up, but yes, somebody could. Yeah, there's so much out there for you guys, really. Speaking of which, another thing, we're coming down to bumpier now. You guys, like I keep saying, you've had vision all your lives. You're used to doing things lickety-split by seeing it, yeah? Another comment that I heard every day was, oh, Jane, things take so much longer now. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It does. It takes longer. You can't do things quite as quickly. But you can do things quicker if you stop relying on your vision, which isn't reliable anymore. So one of those ways is by making things bumpier. Finding the keyhole in your door. Or like in my case, I live on a very dark street in White Center, and our mailbox is in the street. You can't see it at all. So I approach the mailbox with I'm right-handed. I have the key in my right hand, and I have my left finger, my index finger, I'm finding the keyhole. Virginia's nodding. You do this too. If I tried to find it visually, I'd have to get my nose up on it. I'd probably fall into the ditch there, but I can just reach out and feel that keyhole. I know this sounds really obvious, but people don't do it. We don't do it because we're used to doing it visually, right? But if you just kind of change your mindset, feel that keyhole with your left and then slide it in with your right. It's so much easier. Same thing for appliances in your house. I have an example here of the front of a microwave. I'm holding it up in front of me. Most microwaves these days are flat. The controls are flat because they're all digital. In the old days, they'd be a dial that you could turn. Now they're flat. So you can't feel the 1, the 2, the 3, can you? Because they're all flat. So what we do, we add rubber bumps to the key buttons. Now, as a teacher, I'm going to say to you, Virginia, how do you use your microwave? And Virginia might say to me, well, I only ever use the 1-minute button. If she says that to me, that's what I'm going to mark, the 1-minute button. And now she can not even look. She can have her eyes closed and find it by touch. So why should you have to do this? Why should you put your nose on it? You can just reach out and find the buttons that you need. No big deal. Simple. Make it bumpier. Okay? Rubber bumps. Guess what? Available at the lighthouse. Or you can make your own up. I mean, when I was in England, we didn't have any money. I worked in England. I mentioned to you that I'm married to an English guy. So I worked for social services in England, in Brighton. We didn't have any money for anything. And I used to break up bits of spaghetti and glue them onto people's microwaves. They could feel it, a little, dash or a bump. So anything that you can feel that's meaningful. Also on this, I utilized contrast. You can use a black button on a white background. Now, being a mean, nasty teacher that I was, I only ever used clear. because I didn't want them to see it. I wanted to encourage them to use their sense of touch. So I was kind of mean that way. Another classic example. Oh, yes, hi.
And
Okay.
the one participant mentioned that there's also bump dots on Amazon.
You can always rely on the evil empire. They will deliver it the next day. So Amazon also, yes, thank you. Was there another comment or just that one? Thank you. Okay, so another classic one, I'm holding in my hands a toothbrush and a tube of toothpaste. So people would ask me, how can I get my toothpaste on my toothbrush? I can't see it. Again, utilizing sense of touch. It's a little messy, but you're standing at the sink anyway, right? But you just push it out on your finger. I wish I had thought to bring some tissue over here with me. That would have been smart. On your finger, brush it off onto the brush, into your mouth. So, I know.
To get it to the right spot. And I get it on my finger anyway.
Yeah, you might as well start with it on your finger, huh? Some people use the back of their hand. You know, the back of your hand is also really sensitive. So that works too. But honestly, you guys, you don't have to do this, right? You know, trying to get in the good light and use your sense of touch. Okay. All right. Do I have anything else? I want to just point out again, there's technology. We're going to talk about that. It's all wonderful, super helpful, but make it bigger, make it bolder, make it brighter, make it bumpier. It'll help. Okay. All right. So last thing I want to talk about is the general area of mobility. I always leave this to last because this is the thorniest thing. I've got toothpaste all over my hands now. If you've been driving all of your life, there's a good chance that you've never taken a bus. People in my family, my siblings have never been on a bus. They think it's kind of scary and dirty and I don't know what. But bus travel in Seattle is really simple. And I know you don't all live in Seattle. It may be very different in Puyallup, sorry. But for most big cities, we have a lot of transportation options. So if you haven't taken the bus in the past and you're concerned, we actually have bus travel training. I'm fairly certain that this is around in all counties of Washington State. Can't be sure, but I think so. So what does bus travel training involve? Somebody will come to you, find out what you need, make sure you know how to get a senior bus pass if you're a senior, where the bus stop is, how buses work, all that stuff. They'll make sure you're comfortable with the bus. Besides the regular bus, every county in the United States has paratransit. Paratransit. So this is part of the Americans with Disability Act. It is not necessarily enforced, but it should be available in every county. In King County, it's King County Metro Access. Have you guys heard of Access or seen the vans? Yeah. So if you can't drive and if you can't take the bus, maybe you have an impairment, a physical impairment, taking the bus is difficult. Blindness on its own is sometimes not enough. Blind people are completely capable of taking the bus and doing whatever. But if you have an issue that makes taking the bus difficult, you can apply for paratransit. That will take you around. Again, forgive me, but this is particular to King County. We have something called the Hyde Shuttle. I hope something similar is available in other areas of the state, but the Hyde Shuttle is a volunteer charitable organization that has vans running in local areas. So the Hyde Shuttle for where I live in White Center would take me anywhere in White Center or Burien, but it would not bring me downtown. So it's a localized volunteer transportation service. Taxis, we still have taxis, and there is something called Taxi Script, which will give you a discount to taxis. I don't think, Julie and Keiko, do you know, does this work with Uber or Lyft? Do you know? I don't think so either. Yeah, there's a list of taxi companies that take part in this, but it's a good service and it's means tested. Most services are not means tested. This one, your income does have to be of a certain level. And then finally, volunteer transportation. Senior centers are senior organizations like Sound Generations, which used to be Senior Services in King County. They run a volunteer transportation service. I'm going to take this moment to urge you, if you're no longer driving and you need to get to appointments, always rely on paratransit more than volunteer transport. This is a great service, volunteer transportation, but it's not 100% reliable. Drivers get sick, things happen. Paratransit will take you. So. Paratransit is not perfect. Actually, I should say that before I say everything. Nothing is perfect. Paratransit, the King County Metro Access, lots of complaints about it, but it's what we have to help get you around if you can't do the bus and you can't drive. I'm sorry they didn't show up. That's awful. Finally, if you have a vision impairment that's giving you difficulty with walking forward safely, there are some options. And I always leave this to the last because even as Julie mentioned, this is not something that people are really happy to jump into. And that is the use of a white cane. All through my career, I would meet people who would, when I would finally bring this up to them, how about using a white cane? They would say, oh, no, my vision's not that bad yet. I must have heard that 10 times a day. And I don't blame people. I would probably have the same reaction. The thing is, let's talk about white canes, what they do for you, because it hurt me when I knew that people were going to go without it for so long that they were eventually going to hurt themselves. And that's what often happened. The purpose of a white cane. First and foremost, the purpose of a white cane, which I'm now holding in my hands, this is a long white cane. That's what we call it, very original name. The main purpose is to identify you as a visually impaired person. You may not want the world to know that you're visually impaired, but if you're crossing a street, you want them to know, don't you? So this particular white cane, it's long enough so that the tip of it is 2 steps in front of me. 1, 2. Why do I need that? If I'm coming to the edge of a cliff, I want time to stop, right? If it's close to me, I'm going to go over the edge of the cliff. So this cane not only identifies me as someone who's visually impaired, but it also scans the ground in front of me. So I know if there's something in my way, I can avoid it. Long cane. Both Julie and Keiko use long canes very effectively. If you can basically see the ground, but you still are nervous and you think, oh, I want to cross the street, but I want people to know and I want them to look out for me, you can carry. This is going to, for those of you who can see this, it looks very similar to the long cane, but it's much skinnier and lighter. This is called an identity cane, ID cane. It only identifies you as visually impaired. It's too wimpy to kind of feel the ground consistently in front of you. So people will sometimes carry this when they're crossing the street. Hey, look out for me. Please cut me some slack. I'm visually impaired. People also use it in Costco, really crowded environments where you might be jostled by people. I'll tell you, if people see you with one of these, if they see it, they'll give you a wide berth. And that's helpful. So that's an ID cane, really lightweight, easy to carry. By the way, we're going to take a brief break after I finish talking in a minute, and you guys can come up and feel any of these objects or play with them or ask us some questions. And then finally, 3 types of white canes available in the United States. The third one is a white support cane. So again, all 3 of these are identifying you as a visually impaired person. Not because you want people to feel sorry for you, but because you want people to cooperate with you, right? I'm visually impaired, please cooperate with me and cut me some slack, give me some space, whatever. So a support cane does that and also gives you support if you need that, if you have some physical difficulties. So 3 kinds of white canes. Nobody's super eager to jump into them. They're meant for your independence, not for your dependence. That's a critical thing to get across. Having a white cane, having this long white cane, if you are so scared that you can't see a curb or something that you could hurt yourself on, this is a symbol of independence for you. You can now go out. You can move forward in the world and not hurt yourself. You can be independently mobile. All right. So white canes, number one way to help you be independently mobile, typically outside of your home. Inside your home, you know your home, you're probably okay. APS, this means audible pedestrian signal. APS, it's the signal at the crossing of the street where it goes cheep, cheep, cuckoo, whatever it does, all kinds of noises. Excuse me. These are meant to help you know when it's your turn to cross the street. Very, very prominent in downtown Seattle, in Burien, in lots of areas. Okay, accessible GPS. This is a technology thing, but if you've got an iPhone, you can go anywhere you want. It's going to tell you where to go on your phone. Accessible GPS. And then finally, there are all kinds of things to help you. You can wear a monocular, a little telescope to help you read signs, fit overs, as Anne wears, things to help you deal with the glare outside. And very importantly, reflective clothing. When I worked with someone, pardon me, when I worked with someone on mobility, the very first thing I would say to them before giving them the cane, number one thing you should do is make sure you're visible. It's dark in Seattle in the winter. How many times have we all been behind the wheel and someone darts out in front of us in black clothing like I'm wearing today? Yeah, so light yourself up like a Christmas tree. Make sure they can see you. If they can see you, they won't hit you, hopefully, right? So that's a big part of it. Make sure you're visible. And with that, let's take a, how long? 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
If anybody's interested in checking out any of these things, and then we're going to finish up with resources and technology.
Okay, so I think we are starting with Keiko on our resources, starting with services. Is that right, Keiko?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear me now? Okay. So we just went through all of the tips and suggestions and tricks and all that stuff. So, you know, now that you have a taste of what could be and how it could improve your life, where can I get to get more services like this? And some of you already may have contacted Department Services for the Blind for to ask for services through the Independent Living Program. But for those of you who haven't yet, the Washington Department of Services for the Blind is a statewide public agency, and best part of it is it's free of charge. They have a couple of programs there, vocational rehabilitation program, which helps people to get employment. They have youth services, and I don't need to go into there right now. And the other one is called the Independent Living Program, and most of you probably are interested in this program. It's managed through the University of Washington. And the Independent Living Services program contracts with individual providers as well as nonprofit organizations throughout Washington state. So this service, Independent Living Services, is available to you no matter where you're at. You need to give them a call. There's a toll-free number and a local number. It's on your handouts, so I won't go through those. But anyway, it's a they provide services and they contact providers in various communities. So as a result, then there will be somebody or some organization that's available to you no matter where you live in Washington state. In this area, in King County, Snohomish, and do they still do Skagit?
They do.
Okay, Skagit Island counties. The Lighthouse for the Blind, it's located in Seattle, provides the services for the independent living program. They'll have someone come to your home and help you identify your needs and also then provide you training that can help you to continue with your lives. They also have what they call a low vision clinic at the Seattle Lighthouse. And this is a program that's available to people with vision loss. So people who can no longer be helped by ordinary glasses. So the optometrist will look at your assess your vision and to prescribe various low vision aids, just like Jane talked about some of those, you know, head mounted devices as well as handheld and so forth, whatever that the doctor feels is helpful for you to do your specific task that you want. So the low vision clinic requires that you are referred by your ophthalmologist or eye care specialist, and that you have an updated eye report. So when you go for these kind of appointment, that it's probably very helpful for you to know that what it is that you want to do. So if you have certain types print that you want to be able to read or certain tasks, keep those in mind when you go talk to the optometrist. They also have a store, and Jane told you all kinds of stuff that they provide, they have in the store. So I won't go there either. But the phone number there is 206-436-2228. And that's the number that you have on your sheet, resource sheet. Okay, so Washington.
So this is Danielle jumping in for a minute. Next on the list is the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library. So hopefully many of you in the room and on Zoom already use the library, but I'll just tell you a little bit about our services. We provide library services statewide to anyone with difficulty reading standard print. And our biggest service is our audiobooks. And you can get our audiobooks in two ways, either by mail, and we loan you a talking book player, which is very simple to use. It's got nice big keys that are easy to use, even with limited dexterity. It will speak to you and tell you how it works. And then we send you books on digital cartridges that are about the size of a cassette and pretty easy to handle. Those go right in the player. And we usually start you out with about 3 cartridges with 7 books on each cartridge, but we can raise or lower those number of books to accommodate you. And the great thing about our collection is all our books are available at all times to you. There's never any need to put anything on hold or wait. You can have whatever you want. We can completely customize it, give you a whole series, give you any combination of books, books by the authors you like. We can make the library work for you exactly the way you want it to work to meet your needs and make it be just the way you want. And so normally you give us the topics, the subjects, the authors you like, and we can automatically create customized talking book cartridges for you. And as soon as you return one, a new one will go out to you. So we always have books going back and forth to you in the mail. So it's a really great service that way and nice and easy to use. The other option is to use our BARD mobile app or BARD website. And BARD stands for Braille and Audio Reading Download. And that app can be used on an iPhone or Android phone or a tablet. And you can download those books. And the great thing with that too, again, there's no waiting, there's no holds, and they never expire. So you can keep those books as long as you want. Or if you're downloading the books from the website to a flash drive to play on your player, you can even keep those books. If there's your favorite book or a cookbook or the Bible, you can download those and they're yours to keep. So our books are really accessible to you, and we want to make the service easy for you to use. So that's just a highlight on our most popular service. A couple things I wanted to point out. For the players, you mentioned if you're hard of hearing, we do have a special high volume player. So there is an option for people who are hard of hearing. That player does require an application to be signed by an audiologist because it does get so loud that it can be damaging to someone's hearing if there isn't really the need for that kind of player. But that's an option. So you can contact the library if you need a high volume player. And this was showing you, we do have a partnership in the program. So if you are or become a client of the Independent Living Program, be on loan from us. And that's a long-term free loan for a CCTV. So that is one avenue to getting a CCTV. Analogy at the end and the iPhone and what you can do with it. But one of the ways you can use the iPhone is by using voiceover, which that's turning on the speech and then using gestures or using your hand to navigate the phone without looking at it. And we're having an introduction here at 2:00. So that will be in person and on Zoom. And that's a basic introduction to using voiceover. So just the menu up, or there's information on our website to sign up or call the library and sign up for that workshop. So I will leave it at that and turn it back to Keiko.
So the next area that I'd like to introduce you is online services. And one of the best things about online services is it's available to you anywhere nationwide. So definitely Washington State is within the nation, right? Anyway, first one I'll mention is Hadley, and this is a free to people with vision impairment as well as their families and professionals. And they provide variety of workshops and audio podcasts and discussion groups. One of the things that I really, really appreciate, enjoy is what they have, what they call that insight and sound bites, 2-3 minute audio podcast of people who actually go through vision loss experiences and how they've overcome them. So it's really a positive way to hear about how other people overcame their challenges as they live, lives as a visually impaired person. So, and then the next one is Vision Aware. This is a strictly an online information. They give you tips and resources on living with a vision loss. And let me turn the page here. And there it's available for people with low vision or blindness and for their families and friends. So it might be worthwhile to look into that as well. And Be My Eyes is a phone app that Julia is going to be demonstrating later on, so I won't say anything about that at this point. And then support groups, we talked about how important it is sometimes to make contact and really learn from other people who've gone through their experience as they, live their lives as a blind person or visually impaired person. So the Seattle, there's a couple of them here that's Seattle based, and well, Bellevue is a east side. But anyway, what is that? A low vision support group is one of the one located in Seattle. They meet virtually, and they also produce a newsletter called Blind Connections, and they give you information about what might be interesting to people with vision loss. In the East Side Insight Support Group, they meet in person, and I believe they're in Issaquah. And
In your resource page, the very first thing under services is Washington State Department of Services for the Blind, as Keiko mentioned. I'd like to clarify for people over 55, you will be served by the independent program. You'll see a number here. It's at the bottom of Washington State Department of Services for the Blind. If you want someone to come and visit you at home to talk to you about how you can cope better, that is the number to call, the Independent Living Program, ILP. This is the statewide program for people over 55 or under who do not have a vocational goal, but need help with some tips for everyday living, the Independent Living Program.
the numbers are for all of the groups, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to clarify that it's ILP. That's the one that will serve you. Okay, Julie.
Under any iPhone stuff, or what we just going?
Just go. We're
Okay.
only got
we're
10 minutes
fine.
left.
Okay. Hi there.
Let me just tell you, it was interesting. 1990 is when accessibility for computers came into being, and I got to transition in my workplace from typewriter, remember old typewriters? Yeah, to computers. But I can tell you, it is probably, and people that have been blind for a long time say it's the best time to be alive right now because of technology. And one of those things is the iPhone. I have to admit, I'm iPhone prejudiced. I don't know much about Android, so I'll talk about the iPhone because I would be not giving you correct information. But the iPhone is phenomenal. As you know, it's an Apple product. Any iPhone you buy at any store, it automatically has voiceover on it. And that is the program we use to be able to hear what's on the iPhone. It's phenomenal. And what you do is you just tell your iPhone, launch voiceover, and you've got an iPhone that speaks. I'm telling you, for me to learn the iPhone, it's called muscle memory, and I was scared to death. I consider myself having computer phobia. I was scared to death, but it is a lot of tapping, swishing up with 3 fingers, swishing up with 2 fingers, swishing down with. Eventually, the person who taught me said, it'll become natural. You'll be doing it in your sleep. I think I am doing it in my sleep. It does happen. It will come naturally to you, but that's why I'm so excited about the library doing the voiceover class. It'll be a wonderful introduction. I'm going to turn my phone on and hope I can get it loud enough. I need to slow down the speed. So hang on just a moment. I'm going to slow down my speech, you guys. There's a rotary function on the iPhone. I'm going to do it now. I just turn my fingers. 70%, 65, 60, 55, 50%. I think that's appropriate. I don't know if my iPhone or that microphone is picking it up well. Let me try. One of my most favorite apps on the iPhone is called Be My Eyes. There's also one called Seeing AI, and it's good, but My Eyes is, I just love Be My Eyes. Parts of it. One, you can call a volunteer who can tell you anything you ask them. It's amazing. The other one is called Be My Eyes AI, and it takes an AI picture and tells you pretty much anything you want to know. I'd like to try both if I could. I hope I have time, but let me get to Be My Eyes. Hey Siri, launch Be My Eyes. My groups. There we go. Yay! It's finally working. Yay! Calling a volunteer. That's the noise you get while they're waiting to find somebody. Hi. Hi there. I'm calling from a group and I'm showing people how to use Be My Eyes app. I just wanted to let them know what you as a volunteer do. So I bet you've had a lot of calls, or are you new at it? Hello?
Yes.
You are?
So it's a little bit choppy.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm making calls actually.
Can you kind of indicate what you've been called about so people know how to use you?
30 seconds on the microwave.
Right?
And so I just kind of showed her, I helped to direct her to point her finger to the right numbers and then hit enter.
Perfect.
Another person, I think they were trying to, what was it? They were trying to get the remote control, like using the remote control with their TV.
Yes.
So I think switch to a certain program. I think maybe like Netflix or Hulu.
Right.
And then I'm trying to think of what other ones. Oh, somebody was in a grocery store and they wanted to know that the soup that they had in their hand, if it was the right one that they were looking for.
Right. Yep.
Those are the 3 that I remember.
Oh, that's one. You've given us a wonderful outline. What you do when you talk to this gal is she's going to see you, but it's the back of the phone that she's going to look at, different than FaceTime. When you use FaceTime, that's the front of the phone. You've done a wonderful job, ma'am. Thank you so much. How did you happen to hear about Be My Eyes to sign up as a volunteer?
Of course, no problem.
How did you sign up? I'm just curious how you heard about it. Well, thank you for your help.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Oh dear. Okay, man. Thank you for your help. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going to disconnect her.
Call.
I'm ending the call.
No. Yes. Button. Thanks for, please let us, I had a good call.
It's not usually this call.
No. No, not at home. It won't be, you guys. Now let me try Be My AI if I can. Oh, of course. Of course.
Selected. Be My AI. Service Direct Community.
What do you use
Service
for, Julie?
Directory.
What do I use what
What
for?
do you use either of these for?
I've used it tons for labels on food, you guys. I call the volunteers for that. I use Be My AI, which is the AI function of Be My Eyes for clothing, especially. For many years, I had a color identifier. It was an electronic thing. You put it just one place on the clothes and it goes purple, but everything was purple according to it. Anyway, it wasn't all that good. Now I can call Be My AI, and it will say, you have a purple sweater on that looks to be plain. It looks like there's some textured blah, blah, blah on it. I can go down and then I think, I want to know more. So I can go down and I can actually ask Be My AI, what color pants would that go best with, navy blue or black? And Be My AI will say, well, with black, it'll do this. With navy blue, it'll do that. Da, 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 da. And it will tell me if I have, print on my clothing. If I ask it, pretend it didn't say it was plain. And I'll say, what kind of print do I have on my shirt? It's the first time in my life I've had detailed information about my clothing. Isn't that exciting? It's just huge, you guys. It's been a game changer. In the past, I have tons of things I want read. I'd have to put them aside and wait for my human reader to come. He would come once a week and we would read mail, and poor guy had to read all these packages and blah, blah, blah. Now, immediately, I just take Be My A, call the volunteer. Hey, what does it say? What are the air fryer directions on this? I do it mainly for food. It's an amazing, many times I've dropped things. Oh, for Pete's sake, I can't find it on the floor. You look and look and look. I even take my cane and swipe the floor to try and find it. I call Be My AI. I call not the AI, I'm sorry, call the volunteer. We swoop the phone around the kitchen floor and they tell me right where it is. When we had a dog in our home, I dropped pills. Well, we couldn't do that with a dog. They would tell me where it is. Another time I couldn't get my silly dishwasher started. I called and he tells me he's an electrical engineer on the other end. And we got the dishwasher fixed and it's never stopped working. It's a phenomenal resource, you guys. And they have several million volunteers around the world. And then you indicate when you develop your Be My Eyes app, what language you prefer. They also have information for tons of resources. They have a resource list if you want to know anything about it, anything with medicine, anything with beauty, anything with services for blind people. Their resource list is phenomenal on Be My Eyes. Oh, please do.
That I would share this with you, but we buy a lot of Asian food, mainly Japanese, and so sometimes you want to know how to, if you have a package in your hand, you want to know how to cook it or how long to cook it. So they will say, I use what do you call that? Be My AI.
Right.
Because I tend to be a little private and I don't really want to invite
The
people.
yeah.
So anyway, but I will use that. And then they will say there's some Japanese writing. And then I'll just ask a second question and say, okay, what does the Japanese instruction say? And it will actually interpret it for me. So it's really exciting. Yeah. The other thing that I do use too is that, how these days you have these appliances in my the clothes washer and dryer has these dials, but it's flat, so you can't really tell where it's at. In the dials, it doesn't have a pointer, so you don't know where it's setting in it. So I will use Be My AI, and I will ask it to tell me, where is a dial pointing to. And so it's really helpful in that way. I do have a side of, husband who will read me stuff, but sometimes I want to know, by myself. I want to be able to, independence is very important to me. So these kind of apps really helps a lot.
The only disadvantage.
So we're at 4 o'clock and it looks like there's a comment or question from Zoom, and then we probably need to wrap up. Yes.
Okay.
Riley.
The comment is that they said that Be My Eyes, is available for Android as well.
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Yes.
Remember, you guys, before even thinking of using an app like
Be My Eyes, you have to, if you can't see your phone, you have to learn how to use VoiceOver first. So you can use your phone non-visually. It's not hard.
It's a transition to learning speech. It's a transition to transitioning to audio, but it can be done.
So if you have time, it would be great if you could fill out the feedback form. That's the
Please.
last page in your binder. We would love the feedback. If you don't have time to do it today and can send it back to the library, I would be happy to have it. It would really help us. I know this is a long workshop and we covered a lot. So we really appreciate you hanging in with us both here and on Zoom. And the feedback will really help us make it better. So thank you so much for coming.
And thank you,